Today we're going to talk about naming inequalities. And so what we've done so far is we've given the name and then we've drawn a graph based on that, or we've kind of identified some things with it. Today what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a situation where all I have is the graph and I need to figure out something as a result, so what that means. So we're going to talk over some strategies for this, and we're going to take a look, and really, like, there's not like a set of steps. There's just a, like, you need to take the information we've already learned and kind of put it into practice of what to do with it. So like what we're looking at, where everything goes. So taking a look at this, there are two ways that we can talk about this graph. One of them is talking about something is less than, the other is talking about something that's greater than. All right, so taking a look at this, we have an open circle, which means that it's going to be less than, and then there's another way we can talk about it as greater than. Okay, so it's open circle, so there's no equal to part of it. And then if we take a look, the direction the arrow is going is to the left. So there are two ways we can explore this. Okay, remember we've been using variables to talk about what the missing part is. So so the way that we do this, you basically just get to pick your own variable. A caution I would give you, stay away from a lowercase l. Stay away from a lowercase t unless you do it like that. Okay, lowercase l looks like a 1, that's why I want to stay away from that. So if you're going to use an L, do that. Let's see, what else? Usually we stay away from O's because O's also look like zeros. So I would avoid that at all costs. That's really all I can think of things to avoid. We've talked about Z in the past. Just make sure your Z looks like a Z. Okay, because that could get confused with a 2. Same thing with an S. That could get confused with a 5. So my advice is this: really stay away from this one, because depending on your handwriting that can get bad. But if you're going to use these ones, make sure your Z looks like a Z. Do that with your lowercase t and make it a capital L. Other than that, everything else fair game that I would be comfortable using. Today I'm just going to stick with X for the sake of it's quick and easy and it's the one we use the most, but feel free to use your own variables if you'd like to. Alright, now that I've wasted 3 minutes talking about that stuff before we even get into the problem, let's actually get into this problem. Alright, the two ways we can think about this. So I'm going to use X as my variable. Okay, something is less than something else. Well, we're at 0 and my arrow goes this way, so everything I'm looking at is less than 0. And what's less than 0? Well, it's that variable that I'm using, X. Alright, that's the first way that we look at it. That's the most common way that you'll look at it, but it's not the only way. Okay, the other way to think about that is think about it that if X is less than 0, well, that also means then that 0 is greater than X. The value of 0 is bigger than the value of X. So those are two ways that we can think about that. And if you remember from graphing inequalities, we had some where the variable came first, we had some where the number came first. All right, and that's today is getting all of that kind of looked at together. So for any inequality, you can name it two ways. The first is referencing the variable. And what we mean by that is you put the variable first. Okay, the second is referencing the number. So put the number first. All right, so when you reference a variable up above, X is less than 0. So there's an example. And another example of this would be referencing the number 0 is greater than X. So those are the two ways that we can write that inequality up above. Okay, and remember, from day one of inequalities, our intro to inequalities, okay, you can use the words to create the algebra part of it. X is less than 0, right there, or 0 is greater than X, right there. All right, 6 quick examples, and then we're done for today. All right, so let's take a look at this. Okay, key to all of this is, do we have an open circle or do we have a closed circle? And then pay attention to which way the arrow is going. That's going to tell you what to do. All right. The way that I like to do this, for me personally, is I like to figure out the inequality symbol first for referencing the variable. So I like to start with the variable just because that's what the graph is very quickly and easily telling me. So, so for this one, taking a look here, it's an open circle and the arrow goes to the left, so that means it's less than, no equal in there, just less than. So I like to set that up. Then what I like to do is I like to fill in the variable and then take a look. Okay, that's -6 is where the circle is, so x is less than -6. And then if you paid attention up here, all I really did was I just did like we did for graphing the other day, and I just flipped everything around and kept that pointing where it should point. So it's the same thing here. I'm going to flip the -6 and the x. We're pointing at the x, so again, I'm going to point at the x, or remember, it's facing one way here, you just flip it to face the other way there. And that's all there is to it. That's all there is to naming inequalities. It's just practicing it and making sure that you're good with it. We're going to take a look at an example here where you would have the equal to part. All right, so it's a closed circle, which means that it is equal to. So I'm going to have the equal sign as part of my inequality symbol. And again, it's pointing to the left. The arrow goes to the left, so it's going to be less than or equal to x right there for my variable. And then the circle is at -3. So my symbol is at -3. And then just like before, I'm going to switch the order of everything. Symbol is pointing towards the x, so I'm going to keep it pointing towards the x. All right, and then I can already tell this one's going to be the same type of thing with the less than, so I'm going to actually pop over here just so that we get a little bit of practice with one that goes to the right. So take a look at this. Open circle, which tells me there's no equal to part of it, and the arrow goes to the right, which means that it is greater than. And then I'm going to put an x in there, and then we look at where it's greater than, and it's greater than 2. So x is greater than 2. And then to write it the other way, referencing it by the number, I just flip the order of the 2 and the x. My symbol is pointing at the 2, so when I rewrite it, it also has to point at the 2. All right, here's what I want you to do. Even though there's not a you try part of it, I want you to go ahead and pause the video when I get done talking. I want you to try these 3 out. Once you do all 3 of those, unpause the video, check in with me. I'm going to go through each of them. Along the way, I'm going to give you today's math word, so you'll be able to get that. But I want you to go ahead and practice those 3. So go ahead right now and pause the video. All right, by now you should have all 3 of those done, unless you were lazy and you just kept going and didn't try them out on your own. If that's the case, pause it right now and try that. But we're going to assume you tried all 3 of them, so we're going to go through them. And I'm just going to do it like a book. Here, and then there. All right, so taking a look at this one. It's a closed circle at -4, and our arrow goes to the right. So a closed circle tells me it's going to have the equal to part, and arrow to the right tells me it's greater than. So greater than or equal to. Place my variable on the left side there. And then the number that we're at is -4. So x is greater than or equal to -4. So if x is greater than or equal to -4, that means that -4 is less than or equal to x. Really all it is for each of these, this reference is the opposite of this one. Okay, x is less than -6, which means that -6 is greater than x. It's just the exact opposite situation. All right, take a look at this one. Closed circle at 6, and our arrow goes to the left. So closed circle tells me it's got an equal to, left tells me it's less than. Put those together, you get less than or equal to. X on the left side, we're at 6. X is less than or equal to 6. All right, and then we're just going to rewrite that. I'm going to swap those positions, and then my symbol's pointing to the x, so I'm going to make sure it stays pointing to the x. Before we get to the last problem, today's word is naming, since we are naming inequalities. All right, let's take a look at this one to wrap us up for today. Okay, open circle at 3 and pointing to the left. So open circle tells me it's just a greater than or a less than. Pointing to the left tells me it's less than. So there's no equal sign in there, so it's just a less than symbol. And x is less than where it's at is 3. So x is less than 3. If x is less than 3, then 3 is greater than x, the exact opposite of what you saw there. Okay, or flip the order. Symbol points to the x, symbol points to the x. All right, hopefully all of that made sense as you were looking through that. If not, go back and rewatch any of these examples or the one up above. Bring any questions that you have on this stuff. We will be practicing this to make sure that we know what's up. And I will see you guys tomorrow.